We're on the French Riviera in the southern part of France for the final day of the race from Paris to Nice. British rider Bradley Wiggins is the overall leader, but only by 6 seconds, and today's final time trial will decide it all. The dramatic conclusion of Paris-Nice is next. After a week of shadow boxing in the pack, it's all come down to a settling of accounts on the interminable slopes of the mythical Col d'Ez. This tough 6-mile climb away from Nice to the observatory perched above the Mediterranean has seen many great battles throughout history. Cycling legend Eddie Merckx has won here, as did the great Irish riders Stephen Roche and 7-time winner of this race Sean Kelly. But yesterday, American favourite Levi Leipheimer's hopes of a win were dashed in some disastrous crashes.
He was on the wrong side of the peloton and went flying off the road.
Bob, I do not believe this. This is awful luck. This is terrible luck for Levi Leipheimer. With Levi's overall chances gone, Americans' chances now lie with 23-year-old TJ Van Garderen, who is pitched against the experienced Alejandro Valverde and the overall leader Bradley Wiggins. But don't discount little-known Dutchman Louis Wiestra to create a surprise on this final day. The race of truth, the Stage 8 time trial, is next on the NBC Sports Network. Welcome to the Epic Cycle Series presented by Michelob Ultra as we look down on the town of Ez, which has been around for 4,000 years. It's been overrun by the Romans, the Moors, and even an army from Turkey. But today it will be invaded on Stage 8 by the champions of the individual time trial here at Paris-Nice. I'm Paul Sherwin, alongside me is Bob Roll. After all of the sparring, after all of the shadow boxing, it comes down to the final 6-mile individual time trial.
Well, the overall victory is anything but a foregone conclusion, and after 714 brutal miles covered so far, it could all go wrong in just the last 6 miles for Bradley Wiggins. A number of great time trialists and climbers queued up on his wheel. His team has worked diligently throughout the race. He's poised to have his biggest victory ever in cycling.
Well, he's putting this jersey on for the 6th time in a row. He took the yellow jersey on day 2 with a very good breakaway. 21 riders stealing a massive advantage over the whole of the main field. He's nursed his way around France, Bob, to come down to this final day with a very small advantage over the rest, as you mentioned. Louis Wiestra then is looking for 6 seconds. Alejandro Valverde of Spain is looking for 18 seconds. TJ Van Garderen looking for 39 seconds. And, of course, the American rider on the BMC Racing Team, Bob, is looking for a podium finish. A bit further down, good time trial specialist in 8th place, Sylvain Chavanel. He's looking for 1 minute and 16. Well, Bob, on a profile like today, you know, a flat time trial is hard, but when it goes out of the starting block straight uphill, it's even tougher.
Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. 9.6 kilometers. The steepest bits, 8.5% right in the first couple of kilometers. It does flatten off a little bit towards the top. This is a full-on sprint right at your maximum, right when lactic acid is poisoning your muscles. Category 1, top of the climb to finish off Paris-Nice, a beautiful final stage.
Well, I can only say, Bob, the best thing about the finish is the view down to the Mediterranean. Well, let's have a look at what happened earlier. Jean-Christophe Perrault, Olympic silver medalist from Beijing, got himself the fastest time, 19 minutes and 46 seconds. But look who was at that point in 3rd place. The best time trialist in the world, Tony Martin, losing almost a minute. Now we rejoin here Levi Leipheimer. What a disastrous day yesterday. He plummeted from 2nd and 3rd in the overall standings right the way down to 39th place overall. Bob, after he had his body thrown on the ground 3 times yesterday, can he come up and do a time trial performance today?
Well, if anybody in this field could do that, it would be Levi Leipheimer, veteran cyclist. He knows what's required of the hardest sport in the world, from marginal to worse on yesterday's stage. He had 3 tough crashes out on the course. That will have an effect on your body the next day for certain.
Well, it's certainly one. He's starting number 107th this afternoon, and he's looking to see whether or not he can bounce his way back to a race that he thought yesterday he was going to win. So with Paris-Nice now underway in the individual time trial, we'll take a break and come back with the big names of the sport. We're looking here at Levi Leipheimer, and you know, sometimes this sport can be so majestic and so beautiful, and other times it can be so very cruel and unfair, and that's what it was yesterday for Levi Leipheimer, who started this year's Paris-Nice, Bob, expecting to come out as the overall winner. But yesterday, on the roads down towards Nice, it all blew apart.
As a top athlete in any sport, one rides the razor's edge between ineptitude and the highest level of performance, and sometimes Lady Luck does not smile in your direction. This was happened to him and his teammates when they were trying to come back from another crash he just had.
Well, we were very lucky last night because, as we see, this is the third crash on the day for Levi Leipheimer. Bob got on the phone last night down to the south of France to have a word with Levi Leipheimer to take us through exactly what happened on his day.
Take us through your day today, if you can, and what were you thinking at the start, and then how it disintegrated throughout the day's proceedings.
Yeah, like you said, it just disintegrated. You know, the first crash was because I was trying to put on a rain vest on to do a long downhill, and there was a tricky corner. Some of the riders braked really hard, and I dropped my vest, and it went into the front wheel, and it wasn't such a bad crash because I'd slowed down quite a bit. But then, you know, the second one, we started the last downhill, and we were going pretty fast. We went into the first few corners, and some riders in the front almost crashed, but I had it under control, and somebody from behind me didn't, and they slammed into me from behind and broke my bike. Get my spare bike, and I have 4 teammates waiting with me, and we're taking some risks, you know, like narrow roads, 80 kilometers an hour, and then all of a sudden, you know, we took one right turn and there was a motorbike in our way, so there was really nothing we could do but slam into it, and that was pretty much the end of it right there.
And what's the extent of your injuries, and now that you've had a chance to assess things a little bit after the stage?
Things are swelling as we speak. When I walked up to my room, I was limping pretty good, so time will tell. I need to get this off my chest and give it a good go tomorrow.
Can you sum up how disappointed you must be after having a great start to the season and an ideal Paris-Nice up until the descent of the Col de Vence?
I don't know. Paris-Nice has always kind of seemed to get the better of me, and I really wanted to win, or, you know, at least stand on the podium. I guess it got the better of me again this year, and that's disappointing because I felt like I rode extremely well in the windy technical sections of the race and all the dangerous parts, and you know, it just wasn't meant to be this year, I guess.
And the time trial is being competitive at all a possibility at this point?
I'm not giving up, that's for sure. I'm gonna go through my routine, you know, tomorrow just like I would have if I was still in it to win the overall of the race. So it would be great to be able to come back and show some spirit in the last time trial and get a good placing. That's what I'm hoping for.
All right, Levi. Well, hopefully you can put today far behind you as quickly as possible, and good luck for the rest of for tomorrow and the rest of the season.
Thanks, Bob.
Well, I tell you, for those of you who don't know the difference between old money and new money, 80 kilometers an hour he was talking about. It was 50 miles an hour downhill, Bob. Now, that is a very hard impact.
Absolutely. Such a shame to be bedeviled by the last descent of Paris-Nice coming off the Col de Vence. Levi Leipheimer, he had a good chance to get back into the peloton with his 4 teammates, but then a motorcycle bike, unfortunately, had slowed down for a rider that had already crashed, and Levi's hopes of winning were over.
Well, there's another good time here. In fact, Bob, Sylvester Smith has just come in there for Liquigas Cannondale, and he stopped the clock in 3rd place. Everybody now we're going to get the big names starting to come up, but look at the time gaps. They're quite amazing. 3rd place, he's lost 41 seconds.
In 3rd place to lose 41 seconds. We saw the gaps from the first time trial, a matter of tenths of seconds. That shows you how much different an uphill time trial is from a flat one.
Well, this is Diego Ulissi from Lampre ISD. He too now is accelerating up to the line. We are starting to get some very fast times. 4th best time for him, 27 kilometers an hour. That just goes to indicate, Bob, how tough it is. This was the hero of yesterday because the man now climbing up into the top step of the starting house, Thomas de Gendt. Bob, what a massive victory that was yesterday for him and Vacances Soleil.
3rd stage win of Paris-Nice for Vacances Soleil. Thomas de Gendt had a stage win last year. A massive advantage of 9 minutes and 24 seconds at the end of the stage. I haven't seen a race win of that magnitude in many, many years at the highest level of the sport.
Just to bring it back to the explosive nature, Bob, of an individual time trial like this one, these guys are starting straight out of the ramp and straight uphill for 9.5 kilometers or 6 miles of racing. But this race is really a lot more about the preparation beforehand, isn't it? You don't just come out of bed and come to the start house and ride up a climb like this. It takes an awful long time to prepare.
Oh, your whole day goes into these 9.5 kilometers. A cold slap in the face, however, to start the stage, straight out of the blocks, up the Col d'Ez from Nice.
And let's not forget that the man we're looking at here, Thomas again, finished third in the time trial at the Tour de France last year. So the overall leader currently is still Jean-Christophe Péraud. March 25th, the Epic Cycle Series presented by Michelob Ultra continues with the Criterium International. 3 distinct stages will test the sprinting, time trialing and climbing abilities of the world's best cyclists. Sunday 25th of March on the NBC Sports Network. Well, Bob, going back here to join Levi Leipheimer, after that crash that he had, a dramatic crash, one at 50 miles an hour into the back of a stopped motorbike. Do you think he can recover overnight and actually do a performance here?
If anybody can in this bike race, it's Levi Leipheimer. It'll be very tough, however, for him to regain his morale. Physically, it's so difficult to come to grief 3 times, especially at over 50 miles an hour, as Levi did in his second crash of the day. He almost catches the peloton, so your hope starts to rise, and then pow, hits the deck again. Very tough to have a good stage on today, but if anybody can do it, it's Levi Leipheimer.
Well, Thomas Lacente, I wonder what he's thinking in the back of his mind after a very, very long breakaway yesterday. And as you can see, Bob, he's actually on the inside train ring there, and that's an indication that he's really on the steepest gradient of this climb.
Very steep part of the course here. Out of the saddle, Thomas de Gendt, using a normal road bike, doesn't have a time trial bike, nor any time trial helmet. He does have the one-piece skin suit, however, that is common in all the flat time trials. We see flat time trials in almost every stage race, but we almost never see an uphill time trial. This is going to be a very interesting stage today to see how the riders fare throughout the day.
Well, just looking at Levi Leipheimer, he looks as if he's riding a fairly good time trial. You might just notice he's got those clip-on bars in the middle. And again, Bob, it's important because of the fact that it's a violent, short time trial like this, it's all uphill, to make the right choice of equipment.
Most certainly as the aero bars, but the regular road bike. This is the aero helmet as well. So Levi Leipheimer choosing a little bit of a compromise between a pure time trialing machine and the road bike. And he seems to have a pretty good rhythm going. It'll be interesting to see what his time is halfway through the stage.
Well, you can see just on his elbow there, a little bit of road rash. He's got road rash almost all over his body. And he did tell Bob last night that, in fact, as he was sitting down over dinner, the swellings were starting to continue to come on.
Inflammation is a natural result of hitting the deck at over 50 miles an hour. And today's stage will see just how well Levi can recuperate from those injuries sustained in 3 terrible crashes yesterday.
Well, nice to hear the fans cheering on the man who won the stage yesterday, Thomas de Gendt, as he makes his way to the top of this very difficult climb. Second overall last year, Andreas Klöden, a long way down in the overall standings this year. But, Bob, I think Radio Shack, they are one of the big super squads that have been brought together during the winter transfer season. Their goals probably a little bit further down the road.
Well, further down the road perhaps, but you want to have a good indication that you have good form and fitness in any race that you do. Andy Schleck, a disastrous Paris-Nice. His brother Frank Schleck, not that much better. Andreas Klöden, second in last year's Paris-Nice, as you mentioned. It would be nice for Andreas Klöden, for his morale and team morale, to do a good effort here and put in a good result. Frank Schleck is going to start in a little bit. He also needs to do something good now. That for Frank Schleck, it's not a flat time trial, it's an uphill time trial. That's his specialty. Andreas Klöden, good at both disciplines, climbing and time trialing. Could be a stage win in the offering for Andreas Klöden if everything goes right.
Just a nice point of style there, Bob. He's got a very high cadence. He's keeping the gears nice and low, and he really looks as if he's riding a very fast start to his individual time trial here. But in fact, the way the Lady Luck has come out this afternoon, Radio Shack Nissan Trek have actually got 3 riders following each other. They're separated by 2 minutes each on the road, and this, of course, is the man that we kind of hoped was going to get the victory into Sisteron, Jens Voigt.
Second on the stage into Sisteron, just behind Luis Leon Sanchez. The redoubtable Jens Voigt, great time trialist and a solid climber. Could be a good stage for the big German Jens Voigt on the Radio Shack Super Team.
Well, a little chance here, Bob, just to have a look at the rear cluster of Andreas Klöden. You see those legs of his ticking over very, very quickly. When they come out of the starting gate, the average gradient for the first 2 kilometers is 8%. Then it flattens out a little bit in the middle to 4 or 5%, then starts to kick up, dump down towards the end. How do you judge your effort? How do you judge the amount of effort that you're going to put in the first few kilometers of a time trial like this?
That's a great question that all the riders will have to try to solve throughout their ride today. You want to have a lot left in the tank, but also you got to start very well. Also, Andreas Klöden's pedaling style contrasting dramatically to Thomas de Gendt, turning over a big gear. Tactics are going to play a big role in today's time trial. How fast do you start? How much energy do you have left in the tank? And how quickly are you able to finish?
Well, this is the older of the Schleck brothers, Frank Schleck, now trying to concentrate. I think Johan Bruneel will have asked this man today to go out and ride a hard, solid time trial. It's the sort of time trial that suits him. It's uphill. He's a very good climber. And I think if Frank Schleck wants to go back to get a third-place finish in the Tour de France as he did last year, he has to improve, just as his brother has to improve, in the individual time trial.
Well, this would be a great place, a great moment for Frank Schleck to put in a good time trial. It's a climb. Climbing is a little bit different, obviously, than the flat time trials, where power is at a premium. Climbing is also strength versus weight. So for Frank Schleck, this is a chance to actually do a really good time trial.
You might just have noticed there, Bob, not a bad halfway time by Levi Leipheimer there, slotting in third position, and he has got the experience to improve a little bit further up the road. Talk about popular. This man is extremely popular with the French crowds. He's worn the yellow jersey in the Tour de France on 2 occasions. He's been the French national champion on 2 occasions, Thomas Voeckler. And what's going on here? Well, he should be starting. He was not very concentrated there, Bob.
Looking over at his team car to see who knows what. Maybe he forgot his water bottle or maybe his sunglasses. Did not start with those. Also, he has forsaken a lot of the time trial gear, just his regular road helmet to start for. Not arguably the greatest time trial of all time, Thomas Voeckler, but he needs to do a good stage. He hasn't had a lot to crow about in Paris-Nice this week after a great Paris-Nice last year.
And of course a great Tour de France, Bob, because he finished in 4th place in the overall standings. He was so close to a podium position. As we go back to Andreas Klöden here. Klöden, what a seasoned campaigner this man is. He turned professional a long time ago. It seems like an awful long time ago, back in 1998, and he's been competitive ever since then, with a 2nd place finish in the Tour de France, and that was back in 2006.
Starting the stage 27th in the overall standings. This is his time trial style. Road helmet, aero bars, and the regular road bike. A little bit on the lightweight side compared to the regular time trial bikes that the riders use on the flatter stages. And we'll see if those tactics play into Andreas Klöden's favor at the top of this climb.
Well, just a little bit of history for all the buffs out there. Paris-Nice actually started first off in 1933 and was won by a Belgian, Antons Schepers. But from 1969 to 1995, Bob, it was always finished with a time trial up to the Col d'Ez, except 1 year. And that was 1977, when the race was actually blocked by landslides, so they finished at the bottom of the hill. I bet there were a few guys there were rather happy about that.
If you're not a climber or a time trialing specialist, of course the hills, you have an allergic reaction to them many times.
You certainly do. A little change at half distance there at 5.6 kilometers or 3 miles. Javier Moreno moving up there for Team Movistar, a teammate of Alejandro Valverde. Now, Bob, rather interesting tactics, because sometimes a teammate will ask one of the early riders to go out hard to get an indication of what the course is like.
Well, Moreno can report back to Alejandro Valverde, warming up for his time trial just to come in just a little while.
Well, this is Laurens ten Dam. We've seen him aggressive throughout this Paris-Nice. He's going to stop the clock there in 14th place, but he's lost a minute and 21 seconds. Do you think that, Bob, is an indication of the kind of gaps we're going to get down towards the end of this race?
Well, if Pavlovian salivating is any indication, there's going to be some huge time gaps. Flat out effort by Laurens ten Dam written all over his face, and he still lost over a minute and 20 seconds.
Just looking here at the smooth pedaling action of Andreas Klöden, I think we'll get a very good indicator of how well he's riding in a couple of kilometers' time when he gets to that first time check. He won 2 time trials last year, one in the Criterium International and one in the opening time trial of the Giro del Trentino. But as Paris-Nice is well underway right now, we do realize that all of the big names are starting at the end of the afternoon. Bradley Wiggins starts last, 24 minutes past the hour. In front of him, Louis Wiestra, Alejandro Valverde, TJ Van Garderen from the United States of America, and Sylvain Chavanel starts 10 from the end. That's a lot of big names still to come in Paris-Nice here this afternoon. And a brief reminder as we go to break, Jean-Christophe Perrault, the mountain biker turned roadman, is still the best time at 19:46. So looking at the high-speed revolutions here of Andreas Klöden, he's coming up to the halfway point. The time he will have to beat if he's going to do a good ride this afternoon is still Jean-Christophe Perrault, who's recorded 11 minutes and 46 seconds. I have to say, Bob, looking at Klöden here, for me, he looks very good.
Very smooth on the machine, ticking over that gear nicely, smooth as silk pedaling action. Doesn't seem to be under too much pressure so far. He's about halfway there. We'll get his intermediate time and be able to compare that to the riders that started in front of him. Jean-Christophe Perrault doing a very good time trial. Perrault, a great time trialist, former mountain biker, and in the solo discipline against the clock, he's quite proficient and leading the Paris-Nice Col d'Ez final time trial so far.
Well, don't forget, Levi Leipheimer is still out on course. The man we're looking at here, Andreas Klöden, was second overall in this race last year. And of course, Bob, he won the Paris-Nice back in the year 2000 as a very young professional.
New pro, winning Paris-Nice, heralding himself as perhaps a future star of the Tour de France, and that has come true. He's been on the podium a couple of times, and he's the team leader here for Paris-Nice, especially impressive considering his teammates at the start of Paris-Nice, Andy and Frank Schleck. None of the racing, however, has gone their way, and Klöden a long ways down in the overall standings compared to last year's second place result.
Well, let's not forget that Team Radio Shack and Nissan Trek have got a very good rider inside of the top 10, Maxime Montfort, formerly the Belgian national time trial champion, and that could be really wide. These guys now, Bob, are trying to ride hard to set times that he can try and emulate.
Well, looking for perhaps a podium for Maxime Montfort, the Belgian rider on the Radio Shack squad. He's not that far out of that. He could do that with a good time trial ride. It's going to be tough, though. Louis Westra, of course, looking to unseat Bradley Wiggins, the current race leader. He will start last, Wiggins, in the time trial in the yellow jersey.
I wouldn't like to be in Bradley Wiggins' shoes here this afternoon. He's led Paris-Nice since the second stage. We're looking at Klöden here, 6 kilometers to go to the finish. That's 4 miles now. Levi Leipheimer, it's not going to be a winning ride here this afternoon, but for a man who was on the ground 3 times yesterday, Levi Leipheimer has really lifted it up here this afternoon to try and show that he is back in his game, and he stops the clock there with the 5th best time so far. But the gap, Bob, 59 seconds.
All things considered, not a bad ride for somebody that came to grief 3 times on a tough mountain stage, including a 50 mile-an-hour tumble. A lot of riders still to come, so Levi will not probably finish in 5th place. He'll probably tumble down the leaderboard, and that is a shame because he was riding so well throughout the week's proceedings in Paris-Nice. He is 5th in the overall standing so far, but 1 full minute slower than our current leader, J.C. Perrault.
Quite interesting there, Bob, to see the man in second position, David Moncoutier, because if you go back and have a look at the results of the individual time trial that finished up here back in 2001, in 4th place on that occasion was David Moncoutier. He's still around and still performing well.
11 years since his debut at Paris-Nice. He did make a very impressive debut, and like you said, that time trial, he was 4th on that, so good riding by the Cofidis man. It's gone up and down for Moncoutier throughout the week's racing, and he has, to be honest, had a pretty tough Paris-Nice this year.
Well, I just going back to Levi Leipheimer again, Bob, I just have to think for the next couple of weeks, the next couple of days, he'll be going through his mind thinking, would I, wouldn't I have won Paris-Nice? Because he was so close in the overall standings, and a great ride by him on this individual time trial today. If he hadn't had the accidents yesterday, he could have walked away with Paris-Nice this year.
Most certainly, starting yesterday's stage, 10 seconds behind Bradley Wiggins. Levi Leipheimer, a fantastic climber, a great time trialist. He was looking forward to perhaps beating Bradley Wiggins and taking those 10 seconds back in the time trial. He'll have to wait another year for that to happen.
Well, as you said to you, Bob, on the telephone last night, he said he will bounce back. He will try and come back for this race again next year. But sometimes you just don't have the luck in certain races. And let's hope that he's got all of his bad luck for the year behind him, and he can think forward now to the Tour de France in July.
Oh, most certainly. And the Tour of California in May. The consummate professional, Levi Leipheimer, will most certainly bounce back. He's already a legend in the sport, and he's looking to do something in the rest of the stage races throughout the year. He already has one in the Tour of San Luis so far in 2012.
I think that's why people had high hopes for him in this year's Paris-Nice, because he started the season off very well. He went back home to Santa Rosa to train and get himself ready for Paris-Nice. He was competitive. He didn't put a wheel mark wrong until yesterday, and everything was thrown at him and his team as well. The team, Bob, had an awful lot of confidence in him. As we continue to look down here on a man who I think is doing a good ride this afternoon, if you look at his pedaling style, because Andreas Klöden is no stranger to winning individual time trials. We'll get an indication very shortly when he goes through that first time check at 3 miles of racing. As we switch back here now to the finish line, Javier Moreno. Well, that's a bit of a weird camera move if I've ever seen one. There you can see the rider in the dark blue jersey. Moreno posted a very fast time at the intermediate time split. He will stop the clock there in 4th place, and the leader is still the ex-mountain biker Jean-Christophe Perrault, 1946. Looking now into the eyes of Damiano Cunego, the rider from Lampre ISD, 16th overall. He's had a fairly quiet Paris-Nice, Bob, but on a couple of the stages we saw him and his team getting to the front of the pack.
Damiano Cunego starts his individual time trial on the steepest part of the Col d'Ez time trial, right out of the blocks. You can see the road rearing up ahead of the Piccolo Principe, the little prince from Italy, an enigma wrapped in a mystery, surrounded by a contradiction. He started his career as a new professional by winning the Giro d'Italia. The Italians went crazy way back in 2004, thinking that he might be the new superstar to carry the country into the future of cycling. That has not materialized throughout Damiano's career, and he's struggled to replicate that form. He's been good at times and absolutely abysmal at others. He's won a lot of big one-day races, but never been able to recapture that level in the Grand Tours.
Staring into the concentrated eyes now of Jérôme Coppel. He's one of the future stars for France. I am certain about that. He's been the national junior time trial champion of France, but he's also been 3rd in the world under-23 time trial championship. So I'd expect something rather special from him this afternoon.
A lot of pressure on the young man from France, the leader of the Sauer squad, because he's one of the big hopes in French cycling. His team, Sauer, was allowed to compete in last year's Tour de France. This man has a number of small stage wins to his credit already in his young career.
Yeah, well, let's not forget, Bob, he started the season off extremely well. It was because of the individual time trial in the Étoile de Bessèges that he won that bike race overall. Talking now about Damiano Cunego, you talked about the one-day races he's won, Bob, races like the Amstel Gold Race, the Tour of Lombardy, but way back in 1999, he indicated to the Italian fans, the Tifosi that they call them, that he was going to be a great star because he was the world junior road racing champion as well.
Punchy sprint. He's a great climber. One thing that he lacks is time trialing ability, and that's affected his chances in the Grand Tours and the small stage races. You have to do everything well to be a winner in these races.
So as Jérôme Coppel rolls down the starting gap for his own little rendezvous with about 20 minutes of pain, there are 15 riders now left to start, and in the last part of the afternoon the riders are separated by 2 minutes on the open road. So we've talked about this man a lot during the last couple of days. Our Road ID athlete profile for today is going to be the young American rider TJ Van Garderen, who we expect to ride extremely well in today's time trial.
The 21-year-old American, TJ Van Garderen.
This man now has moved himself up into the Best Young Rider competition. TJ Van Garderen will be the new overall leader here this afternoon. What about that?
I just started riding as soon as I could, you know, fit my legs over an old bike. I was about 10 years old. Just seemed like kind of fell into it rather than all the other typical American sports.
And TJ now knows what it's like to be in the Tour de France, because Van Garderen is being hit from all sides. I think they've realized the quality of this man on the climbs.
I was really going for that stage. I mean, I wanted it probably a little bit too much. If I had held my cards a little bit closer to my chest, then I could have had someone else go and then maybe attacked when it was smarter rather than just trying to overpower everyone. I learned a lot from that day, and it was fun to be out there. And you know, I got the Mountains jersey that day, so that was super cool.
First Tour de France, and he's got a leader's jersey in the Tour. Now you know why we're talking 3 or 4 years, and this man possibly a Tour de France winner.
Being in the polka dots jersey, and actually didn't know that I was the first American to wear it. It was a pretty incredible feeling. I mean, I have a lot of good friends on BMC. The thing that set this team apart from other teams was that they we're able to offer a 3-year contract rather than the 2-year contract. So that just alleviates a lot of stress of being like, okay, I don't need to go through negotiations. I don't need to go through all this stuff with agents, and I can just focus on what's important, and that's just the training and the racing and being on my bike. I got a few goals set out. Early season, I'll be looking to aim well at Paris-Nice and then California, obviously. Want to do well in the Tour and help Cadel defend his title. And then Colorado and World Championships.
Well, that's why today TJ Van Garderen is our Road ID athlete profile. I have to say, Bob, he's starting 5 riders from the end. He's hoping to climb himself up onto the podium. He's had 1 victory as a professional. That was a time trial, in fact, in the Tour of Utah.
Future hope of American cycling. You don't need sonar to find the deep end of the ocean. It must be where TJ Van Garderen finds himself, at the top of this sport. Great time trialist and a solid climber. Look for TJ to do big things in the future.
Well, look for this man, 111, the leader of Team Lampre ISD before the start of this bike race, but he's still not rivaling the big times that have been done out on the course. The fastest time at half distance, 11 minutes and 46 seconds. That was Jean-Christophe Perrault. And of course, maybe, Bob, a time to remind ourselves, with Perrault having the fastest time at the finish of 1946, that in fact the Frenchman a couple of years ago in 2009 shocked all of France by beating Sylvain Chavanel in the French National Time Trial Championships. Then he went on to turn professional on the road the following day, and that's not a bad ride there by Andreas Klöden, because all of a sudden I thought he was riding well, Klöden there. Bobby's coming in 3rd place at the intermediate time sprint, and in fact that's just looking for 13 seconds, and he still looks good.
Looking good, smooth pedaling, good cadence there for Andreas Klöden. Just a little bit of rock to the shoulders. Now is where the course flattens out a little bit, and that's where Andreas Klöden can get the big gear going. He's had a good time trial so far. 3rd fastest, just a few seconds behind our leader, JC Perrault.
Well, going back down the slopes here to see Damiano Cunego, started the day in 16th place in the overall standings. But like a lot of other riders, Bob, he is probably using this race to fine hone his skills for Milano-San Remo, which is a great one-day classic which comes up next weekend. And of course, Milano-San Remo, known by everybody as La Primavera, the springtime.
The Spring Classic in Italy. In just 1 week from today, Damiano Cunego has never won Milano-San Remo, and that is a feather in the cap for any Italian cyclist, and most grow up dreaming of one day winning that big one-day classic.
Well, I did not expect a time like this from Thomas de Gendt after the long breakaway he put in yesterday of around about 160 kilometers. He's going to stop the clock currently inside of the top 10 and quite admirably there in 6th place. 54 seconds adrift, but that shows that this man, Bob, he can recover from a big effort.
Long, exhausting breakaway on yesterday's stage. He won that by 9.5 minutes and has been able to recuperate quite well. 6th on the stage so far. He might tumble down a little bit further, but that is a solid ride by the man from Vacansoleil.
Well, the former East German here is flying through the 2-kilometer to go point there, and in his sights is the man who started a minute ahead of him on the road. That's Gianni Meersman, who a couple of days ago got himself a stage victory. And this is a bit of strangeness, isn't it, Bob? Because although we're looking at the Radio Shack rider catching Gianni Meersman, Meersman's dad actually works as a transport and logistics manager for Team Radio Shack Nissan Trek.
Gianni Meersman's dad, a former professional, winner of a semi-classic in Belgium during his career. Andreas Klöden, one of the finest professionals racing bikes today, having a good time trial.
Well, he was 3rd when he went through the midway time check, but what will his time be when he comes up to the finishing line? Will he threaten Jean-Christophe Perrault? So if you don't want to know the result of Tirreno Adriatico, turn down the volume, look away, because I'm going to tell you that the stage was won today by Vincenzo Nibali. He got himself the stage victory, but in 3rd place across the line, Chris Horner consolidating himself in the position of the overall leader. And Bob, if you cast your mind back 12 months, hard to believe that Chris Horner there, putting on that leader's jersey, is back in the sport.
2nd day in the lead in the Tirreno. Chris Horner tragically crashing out of last year's Tour de France. He's had a lot of health problems since then, and the first race back, he's already in the lead of the Tirreno. Great riding by the American Chris Horner.
Well, Tirreno Adriatico every day on Universal Sports at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and strangely enough, on the other side of the continent, His teammate Andreas Kloden is not far from the top of this climb. Coming up now, Capecchi from Team Liquigas. Not a bad ride here, threatening the time of Diego Ulissi of Lampre ISD. He's going to stop the clock with the 6th best time, but the gaps are big, 53 seconds.
Pretty amazing that in 6th place, Eros Capecchi is already almost 1 minute down on the race leader. Big gaps on this time trial because it's straight uphill after an incredibly tough week of racing.
Andreas Kloden is absolutely flying up this climb here this afternoon. And let's not forget, 3rd best time halfway up the mountain, but he knows how to dose his effort, a rider like this. He's no stranger to this kind of effort, and what a bang up that would be for him, Bob, if he came up with a victory in the individual time trial here this afternoon.
Inside of the last kilometer, tipping over a huge gear, Andreas Kloden streaking to the finish line.
Well, he's catching a team car there. That will be the team car of Michael Scherel, who was in the breakaway a couple of days ago, and he's gone straight by him and straight by Gianni Meersman. So Calm comes back to the Paris-Nice individual time trial. This man is the champion of Spain in the individual time trial. A great champion, a winner of the stage a couple of days ago into Sisteron, Luis Leon Sanchez.
Luis Leon Sanchez in the start house, forsaking the Aero time trial helmet. Perhaps a little bit better ventilation on a warm climb here, a beautiful day on Paris-Nice.
Rolls away now, Luis Leon Sanchez. He really is a class actor. Now we can see Andreas Kloden is putting in a fine time here this afternoon. The German rider stops the clock with the new 2nd best time, but still 24 seconds behind Jean-Christophe Perrault. Good ride by the German, but I tell you what, Bob, I'm starting to wonder, is anybody going to beat Jean-Christophe Perrault here this afternoon? He is a very good individual time trialist.
Radio Shack leader Andreas Kloden, one of the best time trialists in the business, only 24 seconds slower than Jean-Christophe Perrault. Perrault put in a great ride earlier, let's face it.
Well, 12th overall at the start of the day. Luis Leon Sanchez is looking for some time to try and pull himself up inside of the top 10. We do know he's a great individual time trialist. So too is Jérôme Coppel, a future star of France, but rather a strange position, Bob, for a time trialist.
And being encouraged by his race director in the follow car, Coppel putting in a solid climb here. Great encouragement from his team manager, just following just behind Coppel.
Well, as a junior, he was the time trial champion of France at the under-23 level of the sport. He was the road racing champion of France as well. He really is a big talent. We saw him ride exceptionally well in the Tour de France last year, and he's hoping to see whether or not he can start to climb up in the overall standings with a good ride in the individual time trial here this afternoon. Looking at the style here of Sanchez, Bob, I'm not sure that he's giving it everything this afternoon. He looks a little bit too relaxed.
Well, he's a long ways down in the overall standings to start today's stage, and he's already a stage winner here at Paris-Nice a couple of days ago into Sisteron after that thrilling finish with this man, Jens Voigt, about to finish his time trial.
Well, Jens Voigt, a former winner of the prologue of Paris-Nice, coming up to the line here. He's battled with that machine all the way to the top of this climb. 9th place time for Jens Voigt, 58 seconds. Look at that face. That is what this man is all about. Courage and guts.
Digging deep for his time trial, Jens Voigt, top 10 at the finish line. Good result for the big German. 40 years of age and no lack of fight left in Jens Voigt.
Well, I tell you what, just looking down there, what a magnificent backdrop for a bike race here this afternoon. We're not too very far away from Monaco, Monte Carlo. This is the French Riviera. You go down the road for about 40 kilometers, 25 miles, you'll pop over into the Italian Riviera as well. You might just notice that this man is sporting a slightly different coloured jersey than the one he wore when he went into Sisteron a couple of days ago. Well, that's because he is the national Spanish time trial champion, and when you are the champion of your sport in a particular discipline, you wear the flag of your country to denote that throughout the whole of that season. Little blue transponder there, Bob, that's important as well because that gives us an indication of the times.
And he'll have his time split soon as we see Frank Schleck now coming to the finish line.
Well, this is a very good performance by Frank Schleck, completely different to the opening day individual time trial. He's challenging guys like Tony Martin, world time trial champion. 12th best time for Frank Schleck at the moment, Bob. I think he's got to be satisfied with that.
This is a very encouraging time trial by Frank Schleck after stage number 1's time trial when he was way back 142nd place.
Well, as we look at the standings, still very similar. Jean-Christophe Perrault leads this race by 25 seconds for Andreas Kloden, but the big guns are still to fire. Looking at the Spanish time trialing champion here, Luis Leon Sanchez. I think, you know, Bob, I was talking to his team manager earlier in the week, and he said that last year when he moved across to Team Rabobank, he had a very hard time integrating because it's very rare for Spanish riders to race outside of Spanish teams. And going to a team where language is a barrier, it was very difficult for him to settle in.
It's almost impossible to integrate easily into a team when you never understand what's being said at the team meetings. And if they're speaking Dutch or English, which a lot of teams do, they speak English, but if you only speak Spanish or perhaps Spanish and a little Italian and a little French for Luis Leon Sanchez, that is a big obstacle. He's starting to find his way, though, and he had a great stage win into Cisterone in Paris-Nice a couple of days ago.
We'll just have quick confirmation there of the results. Perrault is the fastest rider. Voigt and Leipheimer rounding out the top 10. In the background, by the way, you just may have noticed the airport of Nice, and that's where a lot of these riders will be hightailing it to it later on in the afternoon to try and get themselves home to their various parts of Europe. And in fact, that's a difficult thing, Bob, for the American riders, because for the American riders, most of them, they have to expatriate themselves for almost the whole of the season. Many of them setting up home in Spain and in Italy.
Girona is one of the capitals of American pros racing in Europe. Also, Lucca, Italy has become one town that a lot of American pros spend their seasons. The off-season, they go back to the United States, but crisscrossing the continents, that really takes it out of you. Jet lag is real when you're a bike racer.
Well, I think we'll see a lot more coming from Luis Leon Sanchez, and we'll see a lot more from this man this year, Thomas Voeckler, but not in the individual time trial here this afternoon, because Thomas Voeckler has not got the form that took him to 4th place overall in the Tour de France. You can see from his body style, Bob, he just cruises up to the line, stops the clock, 52nd pace time for him, 2 minutes and 20 seconds adrift.
The biggest star in French cycling last summer in the Tour de France finished 4th, rekindling the hopes, dreams, and passion of the French cycling fans. But today, and so far in Paris-Nice throughout the week, it has not gone very well for Thomas Voeckler.
This is interesting, Bob, because we're looking at the half-distance split point here, 3 miles into the race. And in fact, Damiano Cunego has gone in there in 2nd place, looking for 11-second. Now, as a reminder, Damiano Cunego a couple of years ago was the winner of the Best Young Rider competition in the Tour de France. Everyone said he would lose it because of the time trial, and it was because of the time trial that he won that competition.
Well, Damiano Cunego, a great cyclist, never been a fantastic time trialist, but you never know. On any given day, any of these top pros can put in a good ride.
Just looking at the style here of this man, Luis Leon Sanchez, he normally looks very fluid on his machine. We saw when he was in that breakaway with Jens Voigt a couple of days ago how calm and collected he looked. Here, Bobby seems to be struggling with the bike, having a hard time getting the gear over.
You can sometimes get a sense just from the pictures of a guy's rhythm. We saw that with Andreas Kloden, very smooth, very rhythmic pedaling, tickling over that gear. But Luis Leon Sanchez in the saddle, out of the saddle, and not finding a good rhythm so far, it doesn't seem to be.
Well, he could be paying for that effort when he won that stage ahead of Jens Voigt on the roads into Cisterone. But here, for many of these riders, I think, Bob, they just want to get Paris-Nice out of the way and get themselves back to their homes and back to their families, but not for riders like Bradley Wiggins, who's the last man to start. Alejandro Valverde, who's looking to see whether or not he can turn the tables upside down. He starts the day in 3rd place. And, of course, the American rider, TJ Van Garderen, starting 5 riders from the end. He's looking for 39 seconds to win this bike race. I think that's a little bit of a tall order, but what he would really like to do, the young man who's leading the Best Young Rider competition, is get onto the podium.
The white jersey that TJ Van Garderen currently wears, he has a huge advantage, 2 minutes and 55 seconds in that competition, so he won't have to worry about anybody coming close to his overall position in the young jersey competition. But he does dream about being on the podium, he said in the papers, in Paris-Nice at the end, and he's just 2 places away. And the 2 men in front of him, Simon Spilak and Alejandro Valverde, both a little bit vulnerable in the time trial, especially of the caliber of rider that TJ Van Garderen has become.
The silence and the solitude of the individual time trial here as we get a chance to look back down at the harbour in Nice, and there's a new 2nd best time coming in there. Jérôme Coppel, Bobby, didn't look very comfortable, but he's only 3 seconds off the leading time of Jean-Christophe Perrault. And let's not forget there's some big specialists down towards the end. And this man is one of those specialists. 8th overall at the start of the day. 1 minute and 16 seconds is what he's looking for. And Sylvain Chavanel, former time trial champion of France and the current road racing champion. This could be a man, Bob, who could climb up the overall standings today. He's shown fine form all week.
Sylvain Chavanel, one of the triple leaders of the Omega Quick-Step squad coming into Paris-Nice. It was Levi Leipheimer, Tony Martin, and this man, Sylvain Chavanel, that were to lead the Omega team that's having a fantastic season. A little bit of an interesting move by Sylvain Chavanel a couple of seasons ago to leave France and join the Belgian Quick-Step squad. He had sort of stagnated in the French peloton and found new life on the Belgian Quick-Step team. He won 2 stages of the Tour de France and led the race a couple of years ago. And when they made that merger and brought those 2 teams together, well, he jumped at the chance on being a part of this super squad. They've won a stage in Paris-Nice, but tragedy striking. Levi Leipheimer, who was in 3rd place on yesterday's stage. Sylvain Chavanel still looking for a top 10 place at the end of Paris-Nice.
And don't forget, Bobby, he went across to the Belgian team to learn the trade, to learn the ropes of the one-day races like Paris-Roubaix, like the Tour of Flanders, and he's been a very great ally to the big Tom Boonen. I'm sure he will be an integral part of the one-day classics team for Omega Pharma Quick-Step later on in this season. He gets himself down into his concentration now. We're starting to see faster times getting set by the men who want to change the top of the overall classification here this afternoon, because Bradley Wiggins will be looking at this very, very attentively. On the finishing line, it's still Perrault who leads Andreas Klöden by 25 seconds, but that's bound to change. Welcome back to the Epic Cycle Series presented by Michelob Ultra. We're on the final stage here of Paris-Nice, the 6-mile individual time trial from Nice to the summit of the Col d'Aise. I'm Paul Sherwin, and alongside me is Bob Roll. We really are now, Bob, coming down to the crunch time, because this climb is a very nasty climb. Straight out of the blocks, and there is no respite.
And straight up the Corniche of Nice, made famous in the United States by a Hitchcock film called To Catch a Thief. It featured a beautifully filmed scenic with Grace Kelly driving a convertible. But for the bike racers, they have to pedal up that. The steepest sections come at the start and in the middle. 8.5% very steep gradients right out of the blocks, and a hard finish there at the top of the Col d'Aise.
Next man to start in this individual time trial here this afternoon is Arnaud Genesson, and he's one of the young riders of France, 7th overall. Last year, I think, was one of the best years for French cycling when we went through to the Tour de France, because it revealed all these brand new names.
Genesson, one of the young hopes of French cycling, wore that white jersey as best young rider in the Tour de France for a couple of days. Eventually, he was beaten by Pierre Rolland in that competition, but Arnaud Genesson, a future star of French cycling.
Well, I wonder now, as we come up to the finish line, this is Daniel Navarro from Team Saxo Bank. Again, a very solid ride for him. 4th, looking for 33 seconds. We're now starting to get, Bob, to the kind of riders who could challenge this early lead of Jean-Christophe Perrault.
Little pressure now starting to be felt by Jean-Christophe Perrault. You got to feel for Perrault. He's been in the finish line for a long time. He was in the first hour of the race of starters, and he's had the best time so far, but now riders starting to get closer, consistently closing in on the lead of Jean-Christophe Perrault. That was Danny Navarro, and he was just 33 seconds slower.
Well, the powerhouse here of Sylvain Chavanel. He's been a strong man throughout this week. He had a little bit of bronchitis in the early part of the event. He seems to have ridden himself through that, and as you can see, Bob, he's riding on the large chainring. That's an indication that he's going for it.
Wow, that is a huge gear to be able to climb the Col d'Aise in the big chainring. Sylvain Chavanel, a great time trialist, one of the strongest of all the French professionals, solid in the classics. He loves the spring racing. He flourishes in the cold weather, turning over a massive gear so far in the time trial.
Well, as he drops himself back onto the saddle here, he is using a much bigger gear. Cast your mind back, Bob, to the difference in style between Andreas Klöden, who was tickling those pedals very, very quickly at a high cadence. This man is riding the individual time trial with power.
Oh, a much different set of circumstances for Sylvain Chavanel, and creeping up on the tip of the saddle. They call that tipping it when you're going flat out.
Well, when we talked about this team, Radio Shack and Nissan Trek at the start of this week, we talked about Andreas Klöden being one of the leaders, Andy Schleck being a leader, Frank Schleck being a leader. We never mentioned this man, and maybe we should have done, because Maxime Montfort starts this day in 6th place in the overall standings, and he's a very good individual time trialist, having formerly been the champion of Belgium at that discipline. Damiano Cunego now, look at this now. This is a great ride by this young man. You know, he's never really been a great individual time trialist, and he's now going to stop the clock in 4th time. I think Damiano Cunego is showing that he's got fine form this season as well. When you can ride a good individual time trialist, Bob, it's just an indication, isn't it, of you've got the form in your legs.
Blasting flat out was Damiano Cunego. Good to see the man from Italy, who has had such an up-and-down career, put in a final time trial ride of the caliber of Andreas Klöden right there, just a few seconds behind Clodin, but 25 seconds behind our stage leader so far, Jean-Christophe Perrault.
Well, a chance to look at the different pedaling styles here. When we talk about cadence, the speed with which you can turn around those pedals, Andries Clodin before was probably turning his legs around about 100 revolutions for every minute. This man, using a bigger gear, is turning his legs around at around about 80 revolutions per minute, but he's still probably going at the same speed. So at the finishing line at the moment, it's still Jean-Christophe Perrault who has the fastest time, 19 minutes and 45 seconds. Clodin is in second place, looking for 25 seconds, but the big names are certainly starting to line up in the starting area at the moment. They're going through the final few moments of warming up for what is going to be a big showdown in Nice on the French Riviera, and not too far away from the starting house must be the American rider from the BMC Racing Squad, TJ Van Garderen. He will be up next. March 25th, the Epic Cycle Series presented by Michelob Ultra continues with the Criterium International. And there's something for everyone: sprinting, time trialing and climbing. Sunday, March 25th on the NBC Sports Network. The concentration now, Bob, I have to say, on the face of this 23-year-old from the United States of America, TJ Van Garderen. Well, he's in the starting house, and this is a great ride by the Frenchman, Jérôme Coppel. He's coming up to the line there. He could be creating a bit of a surprise here this afternoon. He was looking now at the time of Andries Clodin, who's in second place. New second place finish for Coppel, 17 seconds adrift. Again, Bob, it's great for France, really, to see all of these new names being conjured up in their sport.
Jérôme Coppel, a good ride, getting the better of Andries Clodin. Still quite a few seconds, however, behind our current race leader, Jean-Christophe Perrault. 17 seconds slower Coppel was. That must have been a fantastic ride by Perrault, starting in the first part of the rotation.
Well, in fact, I'm hearing from the direction that, in fact, TJ Van Garderen just rolled away. We have no control at all over these pictures this afternoon, Bob, and they did have to cut to that finish by Jérôme Coppel because that was a very good time. I did see, though, the concentration, those eyes, though, of TJ Van Garderen. He's up for a good ride today.
Fired up. He's fifth to start the stage. He's looking for a couple of places. Also, two vulnerable riders just in front of him. Trying to get onto the podium will be TJ Van Garderen.
Yes, I think the riders you're talking about, Bob, are Simon Spilak, the Slovenian rider on Team Katusha, and of course Alejandro Valverde, the Spanish rider on Movistar. Not a reputed individual time trialist, so that's why TJ, I think, in the back of his mind today, Bob, believes he has the chance of a podium position, and of course he wants to consolidate his lead in the Best Young Rider competition.
Well, that ride, he should not be challenged at that. He's 2 minutes 55 seconds ahead of the man that starts the stage, Rigoberto Urán, who is in second place in the white jersey competition, but almost 3 minutes behind TJ Van Garderen to start the stage. Valverde, Spilak, however, very vulnerable. Alejandro Valverde, though, it'll be interesting to see how he goes through this time trial. He's not a flat time trialist by any stretch of the imagination, but because this is a climb and Valverde's a very good climber, he might have a much better chance on today's stage.
Well, this man has been a professional since 2005. He's 25 years of age this year. He is a very good individual time trialist. He's a very good climber, having won the Tour of Romandy in 2010 after the disqualification of Alejandro Valverde. And he too today, Bob, has a bit of a rendezvous with destiny.
And one of the riders that TJ Van Garderen is hoping to overcome in the overall standings. In the opening time trial a week ago in Paris-Nice, he beat Spilak by 22 seconds. A chance for TJ Van Garderen to move up to the podium.
Well, the provisional results at the finish line, still Jean-Christophe Perrault leads this bike race by just 18 seconds now, but the riders are now starting to queue up right behind him. Another rider coming to the finisher. He's a local rider as well. In fact, he lives in Marseille, which is not too far away from here. Maxime Bouet is 8th across the line there, looking for 42 seconds. But Bob, that is a reference to performance there by Jean-Christophe Perrault. We do know that he was a great mountain biker, a silver medal in Beijing in the Olympic Games. Then he won the French National Time Trial Championships as a surprise, beating the man we're looking at right here, Sylvain Chavanel. Chavanel said, where the heck did he come from?
Sylvain Chavanel will have to put in a huge effort if he's going to pass the time of Jean-Christophe Perrault, his countryman and rival in the time trialing discipline.
Well, I have to say, Sylvain Chavanel is looking very solid here, but on this final day in the individual time trial, it's the clock that reveals all. The current standings as Jean-Christophe Perrault is still leading this race, but 3 big names left to come: Valverde, Louis Wiestra and Bradley Wiggins. The big guns are about to fire here in Paris-Nice, down to the last 3 riders to start. Alejandro Valverde is in 3rd place in the overall standings here this afternoon. He's not a great individual time trialist, but Bob, at the start of this season, he's a different man. He may well have the form to create the surprise.
Coming back from a suspension from doping, Alejandro Valverde has a lot to prove. He already has a stage win in Paris-Nice so far. He's already won a stage race this season, a little bit earlier back in Spain, but now he's on France against a top international field of racers, hoping to be able to pass Bradley Wiggins, who's had a solid lock on the yellow jersey throughout the week's racing.
As he rolls down there, Bob, you might just have noticed that, oh, there's a little problem. There's a gear problem there, Bob. That took a little while for him to get into the right gear there. That could cost him a couple of seconds towards the top. Rigoberto Urán, the Colombian rider on Team Sky, and he is a very good climber himself. He comes up to the line with a solid performance, 6th for him, 32 seconds adrift. But, Bob, I was just coming back to that little story on Alejandro Valverde. The 8 o'clock shadow there. Sometimes when it comes down to a big, big day, riders don't want to shave on the day of the race. They believe that by shaving, it takes away that little bit of extra energy.
5 minutes in front of the mirror, standing up, could be better spent with your legs up, laying in bed. Alejandro Valverde forsaking a trip to the barbershop in order to get ready for this very critical final time trial to finish off Paris-Nice. He did have a little bit of a bobble there out of the start. How to seem to drop his chain. He had to reshift back up into the big chain ring after losing his chain to the small ring. Now it looks like he's trying to get into his rhythm here on the opening slopes of the final time trial.
Well, we talk about the races within the races. You have the King of the Mountains, you have the Best Young Rider competition. Well, he is wearing the green jersey as the leader of the points classification for the rider who's been the most consistent so far inside of the top 15 or 20 places on the individual stages. He is, though, being chased by a certain Bradley Wiggins. Bobby only has 6 points advantage. That could go down to the wire this race.
Well, certainly he's going to need some points to keep that green jersey if he's going to hold off, presumably, the charge of Bradley Wiggins.
Well, we may not have mentioned the name Louis Vestre too much at the start of this year's Paris-Nice, but he's in 2nd place overall after that storming performance at the end of stage 5 to the aerodrome outside of Mende. But he is a fairly good individual time trialist. He won the prologue of the Tour of Belgium last year, but also last year he went on to finish 8th in the World Time Trial Championship. So, Bob, his team manager is actually saying he believes that Vestre could create the surprise here this afternoon and win this bike race.
The joker in the pack with an ace up his sleeve. Louis Vestre starting his final time trial out on course, only 6 seconds behind Bradley Wiggins to start the final 9.6 kilometers of racing.
So only one man left to start. This is Arnaud Jonazon a little bit further up the climb, and he's going through 5 kilometers to go to the summit. That's 3.1 miles of racing. Wore the white jersey as the best young rider in the Tour de France last year for a couple of days and finished in 15th place overall. It really is amazing, the renaissance, Bob, of French cycling.
It's been a long time since a Frenchman won the Tour de France. That's way back in 1985. Bernard Hinault winning the Tour de France. That's the last Frenchman. But Thomas Voeckler came very close, finishing 4th overall last year, and this man was 15th. Géançon, one of the young riders who was 2 days in the white jersey as best young rider. Pierre Rolland, another Frenchman, eventually won that competition, but this young man, big things are hoped for from French cycling in the future.
Well, the Col d'Aز gives a big reflection of how great a champion can be a little bit later on in his career. Sean Kelly won Paris-Nice 7 times, Bob, from 1982 to 1988, and on those 7 times he was 5 times the winner at the summit of the Col d'Az. Louis Vestre here from Vacansoleil trying to cap off what has been a magnificent week for that team. Vacansoleil, DCM, they started with a win with Gustav Larsen in the opening individual time trial. They had a win with this man, Louis Vestre, and just yesterday they had a win with Thomas de Gent. Well, there must be Spanish spectators at the side of the road there. You know, this man looks like he's pretty good, and that's not a great ride by Luis Leon Sanchez. I think, Bob, he's paid for the efforts that he's put in throughout this week, because he's going to finish well outside the top contenders. 43rd only for the Spanish time trial champion, Luis Leon Sanchez. An extremely big moment for this man. He's been titled at the Olympic Games. He's been titled at the World Championships. He was in great form last year after winning the Critérium de Dauphiné, went on as a favourite for the Tour de France and crashed out dramatically. Bradley Wiggins is now underway. He's looking to 6 miles of racing. He is a specialist at the individual time trial, 3 Olympic gold medals, and during the winter of 2009 he was ordered Commander of the British Empire by Her Majesty the Queen. What can he do today, Bob?
6 miles till glory for Bradley Wiggins, the last man to start this stage. He is the race leader in the yellow jersey. Time will tell if that yellow tricot will give him wings.
Well, this is not really his kind of individual time trial, Bob, but you know, when you can push that pain barrier for 4,000 meters on the track, you can turn that pain, turn that pedaling revolution into speed on the slopes of a mountain. Interesting to note, you might just be on the far side, he's riding that elliptical chain wheel.
The elliptical chain rings designed to eliminate the dead spot in your pedaling motion. A lot of power in the 9 o'clock position and down at the bottom when you bring your leg back up. And what these elliptical chain rings are designed to do is to eliminate that little lack of power, makes a much smoother transmission from the muscles into the miles per hour.
Well, I don't know if it actually works, Bob, but it'd drive me absolutely potty if I had to look down at that thing going up and down all the way up the slopes of a climb like this. Wiggins locked solid on his machine, Bob, sitting right at the front end of the peak of that saddle.
Tipping it, or on the rivet, as they say, when you're going flat out, you have the tendency to creep forward on your saddle, changes the position a little bit of the machine, and gets you right over that power position on the pedaling revolution stroke.
Well, that's a magnificent bike that he was riding there. He was ensconced in his very aerodynamic helmet there behind those dark sunglasses, just keeping himself in his own solitude. On the other hand, this rider is more like a puncher. He's got a normal helmet on, a fairly normal bike as well for Alejandro Valverde, but he is a fighter and he will do everything he can. He doesn't have clip-on bars either, Bob.
Very interesting to see the choice in aerodynamic equipment used by Valverde. He has the regular helmet, no aero bars, and he doesn't have the deep dish aerodynamic wheels that are common to the time trial. The hope is he'll have a better chance at the climbing portions of the stage. There is a false flat at the top, and that could make all the difference. Only 6 seconds to the second place rider from this man in yellow, Louis Vestra, who started 2 minutes in front of Bradley Wiggins, and 18 seconds to Alejandro Valverde, the man in the green jersey, to start today's stage.
Well, originally, Bradley Wiggins tried to turn professional back in 2001 with the team sponsored by Linda McCartney, Paul McCartney's late wife, but the team disbanded halfway through the season, and he didn't really get his chance to turn pro till 2002. Angel Vicioso now coming up to the line for Team Katusha, stopping the clock in 16th place. Used to be a very good sprinter, with a 16th place finish there, Bob, indicating he's not a bad hill climbing time trialist.
Not a bad ride for a man that's more regarded as a sprinter on the Katusha squad. No stage wins, no overall contenders, apart from Simon Spilak for the Russian Team Katusha.
Well, Bradley Wiggins here, Bob, is riding in a position that you would normally expect him to adopt on a flat individual time trial. He's locked solid on the bars. He's got an awful lot of power. I wonder if he's actually riding the best kind of tactic.
Well, Bradley Wiggins, an absolute stickler for details in the time trialing discipline. One thing interesting to note, I don't see a radio communication device that we saw in Valverde's jersey. Bradley Wiggins going it alone, trying his best to defend that yellow jersey. His teammates have slaved for that throughout the week's racing. Now it's down to Bradley Wiggins to make history for England and conserve that leader's yellow jersey in Paris-Nice this year, 2012.
Well, this is what he's looking at. He's looking at the time of Jean-Christophe Pirot, 1946. The question is, can he do it? Bozeman, Montana needs to get behind this man here this afternoon, because despite the fact he has a Dutch-sounding name, TJ Van Garderen is solidly from the United States of America. He wears the white jersey on his shoulders as the best young rider in this year's Paris-Nice, and that's the rider who is 25 years and younger at the start of any season. He rose to prominence last year, for me anyway, Bob, as far as I'm concerned, with that magnificent performance in the Tour de France, and he's dreaming today of a podium finish in Paris-Nice.
Big breakaway on the stage to super best. TJ Van Garderen, perhaps the most aggressive rider on that stage, and that portends well for the future of this young American on the BMC squad. In the white jersey, he starts the stage 5th overall, trying to find a place on the podium. That's very realistic because he's a great time trialist.
Well, you might just have noticed there he was in 7th place when he went through the halfway time check, but only 16 seconds adrift. We're looking now at Louis Vestra. Now you can see him nodding a little bit, I think, Bob, on the top top of his machine there. Maybe having a little bit of difficulty ticking over that big gear that you need to keep the average speed at around about 18 miles an hour on a time trial like this. Very, very different to the 30 or 40 miles an hour average speeds that you see on the flat stages. Louis Wiestra starts this stage 6 seconds behind Bradley Wiggins in the overall standings on time in this race. If you cast your mind back a little bit to stage 5 when he won the stage, he came up to the finishing line, Bob, and he almost stopped pedaling coming into the final stages there because he wanted to greet the crowd and salute his victory.
Freewheeling here, lifting his arms in victory. That's a nice salute, but he's losing time. Behind him, the man in the yellow jersey, Bradley Wiggins, and Alejandro Valverde are digging for the finish line and clawing a little bit closer. Wiestra, he probably lost 4 to 5 seconds. That could be the difference in winning or losing Paris-Nice this year.
Well, a chance here to study the styles on the left-hand side. He actually looks pretty solid on his bike, Louis Wiestra, but the smooth pedaling action of Bradley Wiggins on the right-hand side, still his body hasn't started to rock.
Louis Wiestra still looking strong, pulled himself into contention with a great climb up to Mons. He is a fantastic time trialist. We haven't seen him climb that well ever before in his career, so Louis Wiestra must be on good form for Paris-Nice.
Bob, I'd just actually like to go back to that climb up to Mons that you were talking about. We're looking here. This is the man who starts the day in the overall lead. If Louis Wiestra had been the man in the yellow jersey at this time trial, would he have gone into the event in a different mentality? Would he have gone in with more of a thought of being a winner?
Well, race in and race out. It's the leader's yellow jersey that gives the riders the extra power. We'll see if Louis Wiestra can turn that disadvantage around with the great stage.
Well, Sylvain Chavanel, former champion of France in the individual time trial, stopping the clock there in 11th place. He will move up a little bit in the overall standings, but I don't think he'll be too satisfied with that performance. And strangely enough, beaten by the man who beat him in the individual championship of France a couple of years ago, Jean-Christophe Perrault, who is still looking like a very solid leader. At the half distance point, Perrault is still the leader, but only a single second ahead of Spilak. The big names now have still to get there, because next man to reach that point will be Valverde. He'll be followed by Wiestra and then Bradley Wiggins, and we'll get some indication, Bob, as to finally who is going to win this race.
Well, Simon Spilak just 1 second behind at the halfway point and still out on course. Simon Spilak, who started the stage 4th overall, looking for a good time trial so far in this last stage of Paris-Nice.
I think that Spilak is a little bit too far away from creating the surprise here this afternoon, because he started the day 37 seconds behind Bradley Wiggins. We've seen Wiggins being steered around France this week by his teammates, a Team Sky professional cycling squad from the United Kingdom. He has never really put a foot wrong, has he, Bob?
No, he's had a flawless Paris-Nice so far. What's impressed me the most is his calm demeanor. He's never raised his voice. He's never been in the wrong place out on the road. He's let his teammates do the work, and he has also been there every single moment that it's turned competitive. Bradley Wiggins has had a great Paris-Nice so far.
Well, this is Simon Spilak, and I have to say, Bob, starting the day in 4th place, he's gone through the intermediate time check there with the second best time. I have to admit, I would not have expected that. A second off the time of Jean-Christophe Perrault. We could finally see somebody who's going to threaten the top end of the overall standings this afternoon. Jean Lezon now sprints with a last little bit of energy up to the line here to stop the clock. Good ride by the young Frenchman. 8th place. He's going to finish inside of the top 10. He's lost 34 seconds on the day. But I really would like to know what the next man up here is going to do, because I have to say we're still waiting for the American rider TJ Van Garderen.
TJ was only 7 fastest at that intermediate time check. 1 second, however, to Simon Spilak. Maxime Montfort should be the next rider to finish the stage.
Well, Bob, as we look here, this man is very concentrated on the job in hand. Bradley Wiggins, the British champion, the Olympic champion, he will be surprised too, maybe rattled by the performance of this man, though. Simon Spilak, a very, very good ride by him. He was only a single second off the time of Jean-Christophe Perrault at the half-distant point, and to me, Bob, that is a bit of a surprise.
That's a huge surprise. Simon Spilak starting the stage just 37 seconds behind Bradley Wiggins. That might be a little bit too much distance to get the yellow jersey, but he could most certainly get a podium position.
Well, he's looking comfortable bouncing there. He's got the energy in his pedaling style there as he ticks over again. This is a rider using a high cadence, using the suppleness of those legs of his to keep his pace as high as possible. Bob, we're talking about this individual time trial. It's only 6 miles long, but it actually turns out to be a very long day for the riders, with probably a 2-hour warm-up in the morning.
Most certainly, the shorter the time trial, the longer the warm-up. In comparison, Bradley Wiggins and the other favorites will want to reach the start line in the perfect place in warm-up, but not too tired either. And this is a huge effort, flat out, and your legs are absolutely drowning in lactic acid. It's a very tough physical effort. 6 miles of brutality between these riders and glory.
Well, you might have just spotted the Spanish flag there, just over to the left-hand side. Well, that's an indication that the Spanish spectators have turned out. The next man who will come up to them will be Alejandro Valverde. 3 riders from the end. Louis Wiestra is behind him. And, of course, the last man on the road is Bradley Wiggins. I wonder what Bradley Wiggins would have done in the Tour de France last year, Bob. He came with an incredible performance of the Criterium de Dauphiné. We saw him as skinnier than we'd ever seen him before. He'd slimmed off by 7 kilograms. That's around about 16 pounds from his track racing weight. He could have been a serious challenger at the Tour de France last year. Wiestra, what's a pretty impressive ride as Wiestra goes in there. All of a sudden, we're now getting confirmation that Louis Wiestra is a good individual time trialist, and he's a pretty good climber as well, because he's just gone through there with a new best time.
Louis Wiestra with the new best time at the halfway point. Bradley Wiggins started 2 minutes behind him on the road. We'll have to see what Bradley Wiggins can do. Louis Wiestra through that time check with a good time so far.
2 kilometers to go for Spilak, the Slovenian rider on Team Katusha. He started the day looking for 37 seconds, and at the end of it, he could very well easily be looking at a podium position for him. 2 kilometers, by the way, is 1.2 miles. The information, if we can just hear every now and again, is being relayed to this man by the team management, but Louis Wiestra will be motivated, Bob, by the fact that he's gone through the intermediate time split with a new best time.
In the time trial, morale is everything, and when you feel like you're making progress and you get confirmation of that from your coach after the intermediate time checks, it just adds fuel to the fire. So Louis Wiestra doing a great ride so far today in the last stage of Paris-Nice.
Well, Valverde's not doing a bad ride either there. He's gone through in 5th position. 4 kilometers to go, though, for Bradley Wiggins. And now it would appear to me, Bob, that he's starting to pick up the pace. And look at the way those legs are ticking over now. The cadence is high. The energy is there for Bradley Wiggins. He's dreaming of a victory in Paris-Nice at the end of today. And whether he can do it or not might mean that he needs to beat the leader, Jean-Christophe Perrault, as he makes his way towards the summit of this very difficult climb on the outskirts of Nice. He's just gone through the first time check there, and in fact he's 2 seconds behind the time of Louis Wiestra. That leaves his advantage over the Dutchman now at a mere 4 seconds. This race could get turned upside down on the very last day of racing. Welcome back to the final few riders to come into the finishing line now of this year's Paris-Nice. TJ Van Garderen, the young man from the United States of America, wants to ride into a podium position if he can here this afternoon. He's going to stop the clock in 10th place. He's lost 42 seconds, Bob. What's that going to do for his podium chances?
That's not a bad ride by TJ Van Garderen. We'll have to see how Spilak and Valverde do, but I think he might be a little bit disappointed with that. He would have to challenge a time of Perrault to be able to move himself. He has a deficit to the riders in front of him. He has to wipe that out by a spectacular ride. That was a solid ride, but maybe not quite enough.
Well, we're looking here at a man battling to keep himself in a podium position here. 3rd at the start of the day, Alejandro Valverde. Bob, doesn't look all that comfortable to me. He's out of the saddle. He's fighting all of the time. He knows that in front of him, Simon Spilak, the Slovenian rider from Team Katusha, could be creating the surprise and may well be here this afternoon, dethroning the Spaniard from the top 3.
Simon Spilak was 2nd fastest in the time check. That was when he went through. Louis Wiestra now has become the fastest man through that time check. He is challenging the time of the leader, Jean-Christophe Perrault. This is a very good ride by Simon Spilak. So Alejandro Valverde, he'll get reports of that from his team manager. He has to really pick it up to hold off the charge of the man from Slovenia on the Katusha squad.
Over to the right-hand side, you may well just spot the small town of Ez, which has been around here for more than 4,000 years. It's seen many, many changes throughout its history. We may well be seeing a change right now because Jean-Christophe Perrault is the leader in a time of 19 minutes and 46 seconds in the individual time track. But Spilak has gone behind that time, Bob, but it's still a very good rider by this young rider from Slovenia. As he comes up to the line, he gives his all here. He's going to stop the clock with a new second best time, 14:13. Well, I'll tell tell you one thing, TJ Van Garderen is not going to leapfrog over this man.
Well, that was an impressive second half of the ride by Jean-Christophe Perrault. Spilak 1 second halfway through the stage, finishes 14 seconds down. So that tells us that Jean-Christophe Perrault really put on the afterburners in the last half of the time trial. Spilak losing 13 seconds in the last 4 Ks. Also, TJ Van Garderen struggling in the last 4 Ks. You cannot overcook it. You cannot start out too fast in this time trial. Jean-Christophe Perrault still looking solid as the race stage leader.
I have to say, Bradley Wiggins here is still looking fairly solid on his machine, and he does have the slight advantage of having the time checks and knowing that Louis Wiestra is up the road in front of him, but I think he may well be a fraction rattled by the fact that he knows he's only got 4 seconds left of his overnight advantage. Looking at the different styles there, I still have to say, Bob, I think that Bradley Wiggins is still looking very fluid indeed.
In a flat time trial, it would be anybody's ball game, but Bradley Wiggins has become such a great climber recently in the last couple of seasons, winning the Dauphiné. You do not win a mountainous stage race in professional cycling without being a great time trialist. Bradley Wiggins versus Louis Wiestra for all the marbles in Paris-Nice.
A big gear is being used there by Alejandro Valverde. Bob, you were talking about the difference in the course. Well, as you get to the top of the Col d'Ez, will the advantage tip then towards Bradley Wiggins? Because the last few kilometers are actually rather flat, and that's when the speed of the trackman could kick in.
What makes it so hard to tell is that Louis Wiestra has some similar characteristics as Bradley Wiggins, and until the stage number 5 Timon, Wiestra never demonstrated the climbing ability that Wiggins has in the last couple of years. So it's going to be a very thrilling stage race. They are locked in a titanic battle.
Alejandro Valverde, this is not a bad ride by Alejandro Valverde. He has fought his way back into this bike race, Bob, over the last few hundred meters. Around that final corner, the sprint for the line, he wants to stay on the podium if he can. He's looking at the time of Jerome Koppel, and he's just gone outside of that. But a 4th place finish for Alejandro Valverde, 19 seconds adrift, is not bad in my book.
He will stay ahead of Simon Spilak. He was just 4 seconds slower. That's one of the best time trials we've seen Alejandro Valverde do in a very long time.
2 men remain out on the road of the final stage of Paris-Nice here this afternoon. In the blue jersey, in the blue corner, Louis Wiestra was looking for 6 seconds at the start of the day. He started in 2nd place in the overall standings. He's starting to rock and roll that header fraction, but I think they're all, Bob, now in the red zone. They are pushing themselves to the absolute limit. They know these are the final few minutes of what has been a 720-mile ride down through the very heart of France.
This is discipline. This is time trialing perfection. Bradley Wiggins on the rivet of his machine, looking rock solid. He started the stage 2 minutes behind this man on the open road with a 6-second advantage, but Louis Wiestra has had a great time trial also.
Oh my goodness me, look at the time of Louis Wiestra as he comes around that corner. He is going to create the massive big surprise here this afternoon, because Wiestra accelerates up to the line. It's going to be a brand new best time. 31 seconds, the beating of Jean-Christophe Perrault, Bob. That has thrown down the gauntlet to Bradley Wiggins. This man is a massive revelation of this year's Paris-Nice.
No one has come close to the time of Perrault, and it's Wiestra that beats him by a whopping 32 seconds, stopping the clock at 19:14. Bradley Wiggins knows the magic number now. It will be 19 minutes and 20 seconds, streaking to the finish line in the last few kilometers of his Paris-Nice.
Well, now this man knows that he's lost 2 seconds of his overnight lead. He's down to a 4-second advantage, and Bob has calculated that he must finish within 19 minutes and 20 seconds if he's going to win Paris-Nice here this afternoon. But this man is a class act. He's now inside of the final kilometre, and he's now going to have to do everything he can. I do say, though, Bob, I think he's getting onto the kind of road which tips towards his advantage, pure speed.
Pure speed part of the course, the false flat at the top to finish off the final kilometers of this last time trial in the stage race. Tactics and pacing will be everything for Bradley Wiggins. He's very experienced. He knows exactly what he needs to do. The question is he capable of doing that? Louis Wiestra put in an incredible effort, taking a lot of time out of the race leader Perrault, who led since the first hour of racing.
You've got to wonder, Bob, if there's not been a slight change in the climatic conditions, but I say Jean-Christophe Perrault really laid down down the gauntlet here this afternoon. 500 meters to go now for Bradley Wiggins. He will know the time. He'll be looking at the clock across the finishing banner there to know whether or not he's going to win Paris-Nice this year. I'm fairly certain that Sean Yates, who is in the team car behind him, will have shouted that out. Sean Yates himself, a very good individual time trialist. He would have done the maths. He knows what his man has to do.
Just a few hundred meters to go now. It's going to be desperately close. Bradley Wiggins bearing in on the finish line. He has a few meters between himself and the finish of Paris-Nice.
Well, he's round that corner into the finishing straight now. He's looking at the time of 19:14. It's ticking away very quickly indeed. And no, it's not going to be for Louis Veistra. It's going to be for Bradley Wiggins. He stopped the clock, and look at that, Bob. A 2-second deficit he has turned into a 2-second advantage over the last half of this climb here this afternoon. He will win Paris-Nice. He'll be the first Brit, by the way, to win Paris-Nice since 1967. And on that occasion, it was Tommy Simpson. Here is confirmation of the stage results. 2 seconds to Veistra, 33 seconds to Jean-Christophe Perrault. Alejandro Valverde, for me, that's a good ride in 6th place. Damiano Cunego is not bad either at 9th and 59 seconds. But I tell you one thing, that was a very dramatic comeback by Bradley Wiggins. He really had to pull himself inside out to get that one done.
Masterpiece of pacing and tactics, but that's nothing for Bradley Wiggins without talent and courage. What a great ride by the British man on the Sky team. He will go out the winner of Paris-Nice in 2012.
But throughout the rest of this season, we will talk about this man, Louis Veistra, second in the individual time trial today, second overall now in Paris-Nice as Bradley Wiggins walks away to the doping control, not too far away from the finishing line. When we come back, we will have an interview with the overall winner of Paris-Nice this year, and of course the podiums and the whole wrap-up. Looking down on the town of Aix, it might be time to remind ourselves that the town's motto is Isis Moriendo Renasco, which means in death I am reborn. And the emblem of the phoenix is the town's emblem, and that's just exactly maybe what happened to Bradley Wiggins here this afternoon. He was reborn out of the ashes and came up to win his second individual time trial of the season.
Well, you got to tip your hat to Bradley Wiggins under tremendous pressure throughout the week. He's the leader of the Sky team. Let's not forget his teammate is none other than Mark Cavendish. So a win at this part of the season assures his team that he is a capable leader when we get into the Tour de France a little bit later in the summer.
Well, that's why I think we're going to give Michelob Ultra Ride of the Day to one man, the man who is champion of Great Britain today, crowned champion of Paris-Nice.
It can go to no other man. Stage win to secure the overall title of Paris-Nice. Bradley Wiggins, your deserving winner of the Ride of the Day.
Yes, presented by Michelob Ultra. Now, this is what he's been waiting for, Bradley Wiggins, the final yellow jersey of this year's Paris-Nice. And you've got to turn the British clocks back to 1967 to see the last British winner of Paris-Nice. And that, of course, was the great, legendary Tommy Simpson.
Tommy Simpson, the last British rider, but an incredible ride, not only by Bradley Wiggins to win Paris-Nice, but his teammates were always there at the right place, at the right time. And that's how you win big international stage races.
And I think that also spells out, Bob, that his major goal of the year will be the Tour de France. He's setting down his foundations very early on in his season, and he'll pop over the channel then to try and win the Olympic Games individual time trial as well in the very shadows of Buckingham Palace. So let's have a look at the final overall standings. Bradley Wiggins wins from Louis Veistra by 8 seconds. Valverde did a good ride to hold on to 3rd place there at 1 minute and 10 seconds, and TJ Van Garderen, he dreamed about the podium but ended up in 5th place overall. Sylvain Chavanel remained in the same place in 8th, and that good ride by Angel Vicioso moved him up into 10th place overall. So as we look a little bit further down, Andreas Kloden with his ride moved up into 18th place, and we I think are not too far away from a little interview with Bradley Wiggins behind the podium.
It's a lot of pressure on your shoulders. You were actually behind at the halfway mark, but managed to clock the best time.
Yeah, I mean, you know, still that's nothing compared to being an Olympic final on the velodrome, you know. So I always have that as the worst kind of moment of pressure, and these things are, you can really enjoy the moment, but you know, I was just confident in my ability. I'd been there all week, I hadn't put a foot wrong, and I knew Walter was strong, and you know, I just had to concentrate on my ride and not try to match him early on, and then that's what I did, and I rode it perfect, and it was a tough way to finish the race, really was.
Looked like all that pressure you had on your shoulders ever since day 2, actually, with the jersey faded away once the finish line was crossed. How important is it to win Paris-Nice?
Well, you know, I mean, I know my stuff with cycling, and you know, the history of this race, to be on that list now with the guys that have won this race, and you know, to become the second Brit to win it after Tommy Simpson is it means a lot to me. And yeah, as I say, just to be now in that Palmares with the guys who've won Paris-Nice, Dauphiné. It's just one left now to win. So.
Now that's one part of the season done in style, winning Paris-Nice. What are the plans now?
Just continue working hard, working on the things we've been working on since November, and continue that progression towards July, really. You know, it's been a long process up to now, as I've been saying all week, and you know, it's going perfect at the moment. So hopefully it continue that way.
Yeah, that main objective remains obviously the Tour de France. Winning Paris-Nice obviously is a huge boost in confidence.
Yeah, I said, you know, the other day it was a stepping stone, and that was no disrespect to Paris-Nice, but in terms of if you're capable of winning Paris-Nice, then, you know, I think you're certainly on track and capable of winning the Tour de France. And even had a little message from Lance Armstrong the other day telling me to not burn too many matches for July, so it's certainly all on track, yeah.
Well, the famous names, Bob, he was talking about. Eddy Merckx won this race and went on to win the Tour de France. Miguel Indurain did the same thing, but that man seems to me to be oozing confidence.
When you are calm, cool, and collected like Bradley Wiggins has been throughout the week, and then you are able to turn back your effort a little bit against a rival like Louis Westra, which Bradley Wiggins was able to do, that shows a lot of maturity, a lot of confidence. Things are auguring well for Bradley Wiggins and the rest of the season. One more objective, he said, the Tour de France.
Well, that is the big objective. Let's not forget this man who, in fact, with that win this afternoon, is also the winner of the green jersey points competition for the most consistent rider in the individual stages. He won a single Olympic medal back in 2004 in Athens, came back to Beijing and won 2 Olympic gold medals there as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't put another one onto his belt when he goes to the individual time trial in London. But on his way to London, he has made the major goal of his season to be, of course, the Tour de France. In the King of the Mountains classification, long breakaways by Frederik Voeckelen gave him a massive lead of 64 points over Luis Angel Mate of Team Cofidis, and caps up what has been a very successful week of racing by Vacansoleil. 3 stage victories, a second place in the overall standings, and the King of the Mountains classification to boot.
Magical week of racing for Vacansoleil and a second place in the overall standings, and almost an incredible upset with Louis Westra locking horns with Bradley Wiggins. But in the King of the Mountains competition, this man Voeckelen was unassailable.
Well, the jersey for the best young rider in this year's Paris-Nice has been firmly on the shoulders of TJ Van Garderen for a couple of days now. He wins that competition by 2 minutes and 46 seconds from the Colombian climber Rigoberto Urán.
Some days he has a big smile, some days he's a little bit miffed at that white jersey. He would love to get yellow eventually. This man, TJ Van Garderen, the future of American cycling in the stage races, who'll be looking forward to the Amgen Tour of California in a few weeks' time, perhaps trade the white jersey for the yellow jersey of race leader.
Well, he was the winner of the best young rider in the Amgen Tour of California last year, as well as winning the best young rider competition in the USA Pro Cycling Challenge in August in the state of Colorado. Now, the next presentation we'll be looking for will be the team classification, and it's not really a major surprise at all, is it, Bob? Vacansoleil with a 4-minute 45-second beating of Team Sky.
And it was Thomas de Gendt yesterday who had 9.5 minutes to the peloton that gave them that big advantage, and they beat the Sky team, who finishes second in the team standing.
Well, Bob, they've had a magnificent week of racing here. The team classification added to all of their other success over these last few days.
They've had 3 stage wins, the King of the Mountain jersey, second overall, and now the team prize. A magical week for Vacansoleil, the 3 men, Voeckelen, Westra, and that looks like Romain Fayou, the French sprinter on the squad, on the podium.
So, as we look at the winners there, let's not forget on March the 25th, the Epic Cycle Series presented by Michelob Ultra continues with the Criterium International. Last year, it was Frank Schleck who took the win in this mini Tour de France. Sunday, March 25th on the NBC Sports Network. And if you're a motor racing fan, the NBC Sports Network drops the green flag on the new season of the IZOD IndyCar Series, Sunday, April the 1st, with the Honda Grand Prix of Alabama. For a full cycling schedule, log on to our website at nbcsports.com. For Bob Roll, I'm Paul Sherwin saying thanks for joining us this week. And as a reminder, let's take a look back at some of the great images of a good week of racing.